Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about Titanic history. We're going to be talking about Titanic history. We're going to be talking about what happened to Titanic when it hit the iceberg, and about what happened to it during the first hour of the sinking. So, welcome and enjoy. So, as we know, Titanic was the biggest ship in the world in 1912. And Titanic, it basically, it hit. It was basically traveling across the North Atlantic, and at around 11:37 p.m., there are some Frederick Lee, who are looking out in front of the ship to try and spot anything. They don't see anything yet due to a mirage effect. The mirage effect, basically, the mirage effect, it essentially put a false horizon, allowing you to see farther than you normally would have been. But there's a stretch to that, and there's some strings involved. That means basically you can see farther, but you can't see the real horizon or anything near the real horizon, such as an iceberg. So that means whenever there's an iceberg, like the one the Titanic hit, it's underneath the false horizon, so it's invisible until we come right up upon it. So the Titanic is sailing. It's sailing across. So yeah, the Titanic, it is sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. Sailing and sailing and sailing. Titanic is sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. Then the iceberg is literally right out in front of them. So pretend that a finger is the iceberg. Pretend that a finger is the iceberg. They won't see. The Titanic's not gonna see the iceberg until right up upon it. By the time they turn, it's too late. They strike the iceberg. The damage goes from the very front of the ship. So the iceberg damage goes from the very front of the ship. Iceberg damage goes from the very front of the ship. So essentially, the iceberg damage. This is my first video, but the iceberg damage goes in the very front of the ship. It's after the first funnel. 300 feet of the hull was damaged by the iceberg impact. Yeah, so it breached 5 compartments severely, and a sixth compartment very minorly. There were all a bunch of dots and dashes. It was not one big rip. It was a bunch of small dots and dashes, allowing water to go inside the hull of the Titanic. And they spotted the iceberg at 11:39. But by then, it was too late. The Titanic tried to turn and get away from the iceberg, but they impacted it. And that's basically what happened. A bunch of dots and dashes going from the very front of the ship after the first funnel. In mind this, the Titanic had a 3-degree list to port due to an offset weight of coal of 600 to 700 tons. Inside of the forward coal bunker of boiler room 5. So the ship had a 3-degree list to port, and the Titanic had a 3-degree list to port, and it was sailing along, hit the iceberg. At some point, the water offset the weight of coal, the port list eased, then it listed to starboard. The starboard list stopped, then the ship went back on an even keel. Then when the water reached the Scotland Road, which goes from the very front of the ship to the entire back of the ship. So this allows, so if it begins flooding here, the water can make it from the very front of the ship. So while the first 6 compartments are flooding, the water is able to make it all the way, it's able to bypass all the compartments. So while the first 6 compartments are flooding, it can now flood the back 6 compartments It can offload the back 6 compartments, and it can basically flood past the front 6 compartments, I'm trying to say. And, so the water makes its way further and further aft, and the water is able, while the first 6 compartments are flooding, it's able to flood the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, and maybe even the 12th compartment at the same time. Water would essentially flow down on you from above. So if you were trying to get out of boiler room 4, per se, if you're trying to climb up and get out, the water would whoosh down. It would come whooshing down, making it impossible to get out. And you try and open a watertight door and go back further back within the ship. Each watertight door, by the way, had a float plate. The float plate, essentially, here's the watertight door. It's all in the open stages, and this is how it is when it's closed. And there's a float plate underneath the watertight door, so if there were to be a leak and the crew didn't know about it, if the water were to flood over the float plate would float up, and the watertight door would slam shut, essentially sealing off each and every compartment that is flooding, so it would basically contain the water on its own. So they prepared for this. So in the engine room, since all the pumps are in the back sections of the ship, when they had to run hoses from the center of mass, which is located in between the 3rd and 4th funnels. And what most people don't know is the 4th funnel right here is fake. There's underneath this is around the power generator room, and just underneath this structure here is just down here is the engine room. Each funnel serves a pair of boiler rooms, except for the 4th funnel. The first one is the front one, serves boiler rooms 6 and 5. The second one serves 4 and 3. The third one serves 2 and 1. And the fourth one it's down here is the power generator room. Down here is the power generator room. And right here is the engine room and boiler room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, cargo hold 1, cargo hold 2, cargo hold 3, cargo hold 2, cargo hold 1, and the forepeak. And behind here is where propeller shafts go. Before propeller shafts go to here, the propellers are not visible in this model. There'd be propeller here, and propeller here. And the ship has a main electrical turbine. And this structure, right here, this is where the grand staircase dome is housed. Right here's the compass tower. And right here is where the aft grand staircase dome is put. The aft grand staircase only goes down 3 decks, A deck, B deck, and C deck. Unlike the grand staircase, it goes from boat deck down to F deck. And yeah, the Titanic developed a port list, and when the water reached this, right here, it reached, it's my first video, sorry about that, but when the water reaches right here, let's say right here is where the gangway door is, Lightoller, second officer Lightoller, sent some crew people down to open this watertight door, this gangway door, to help assist with the lifeboats, but they're never used, because Lightoller never sees this man again. He never sees these men again. So when the water floods past this gangway door, it's bigger than all the iceberg damage combined. So that means when the water floods into one huge room called the first class reception room. And it's also able to flood to the grand staircase. It's able to flood up the grand staircase, allowing further access to the ship. It's also able to flood further back into a room 3 times the size, called the first class dining room. There's a few more rooms behind that. There's where the kitchen is, and there's stairwells back there, allowing further access to the ship. I think, due to this gangway door being open, it sped up the sinking by 30 minutes to an hour. And so the ship could have lasted until 3 a.m. had that gangway door not been opened, or if somebody went back and closed it before it flooded, but that didn't happen. It didn't happen. So the ship was there's a 10-15 minute period as the door is beginning to submerge. The port list isn't that bad, but 10 or 15 minutes later, it's more noticeable. It's more pronounced. And there are these people in boiler rooms 4, 3, and 2. Boiler 1 was never lit during the sinking or the voyage. Boiler rooms 4, 3, and 2 were being used to keep. There were lots of people staying behind, including the ship's chief engineer. And there were these people. And there were these people that There were these people that yeah, there were these people that the guarantee group, all 10 of them, died that day, except for one of them who departed at Southampton. And yeah, so one of them departed at Southampton. He was arrived because he wasn't there at the time. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, yeah. Let's hope we don't have any more interruptions during this video. But yeah, there were people staying behind in the engine room and power generator room. And there were people in boiler rooms 4, 3, and 2 that stayed behind. And they kept shoveling coal. They kept the ship's electrical systems on until nearly the very end. But I'll get to that in part 2. But yeah, the ship's bow at around 1 a.m. was beginning to submerge on the port side due to that pronounced port list. And yeah, I'll talk about more about it on the video part 2, which will be coming later today or tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.